Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time. Well, I'm here for yet another update on my joint and muscle rub that I make. Finally getting around to putting all of this in one video to make it easier for you so you're not having to jump around and see this video, that video, and that video, just like I did with my skin cream video and my healing salve video, which I'll link to those down below. First, I want to explain to you how I'm going to do this and give you some options for making your own. So right here is a finished bottle that is the one we're currently using of my joint and muscle rub. Right here is a finished batch of the infused oil that I'll be straining out today. So the two oils I use for this are avocado oil, because it does not go rancid. It has an incredibly long shelf life, no matter how warm the room is that it's stored in, and castor oil. I'll be doing a 50-50 blend of the oils in the infusion. So the herbs I'll be using today are going to be comfrey. This is from my own garden. I grow a lot of comfrey. Arnica, I do grow this now, but this is arnica flowers that I had stocked up on before I was able to successfully start growing my own arnica. Red pepper flakes and whole cloves. So I've narrowed it down to these four. The last batch, the one that you see right here, also included dried rosemary in it and dried peppermint. And though I won't be adding those today, they still are really great. That's what these have. In fact, this oil, I did try it out just as is without any added essential oils to it. And it actually does work pretty good just like this. So if that's all you wanted to do and you wanted to get away from using essential oils at all, I do recommend adding those. Dried ginger would be another good one to add. Now, for me, I would use the pieces like this, but you could use the powder. You could also do the same in place. If you don't want to use red pepper flakes, you could use cayenne, ground cayenne, or any other hot pepper in its place, or any other ground herb that you weren't concerned about straining out. I prefer to keep the oil itself pretty clean, and so everything strains out pretty good, especially since I'm rubbing it on my skin. But I will admit, about 14 years ago, I first started creating my own joint and muscle rub, and I was having to use it a lot in dance and martial arts. I did start off using cayenne pepper in oil and then added some essential oils to it, and that worked really good. But what I've been trying to develop is something where you wouldn't have to add any essential oils. I'll be filling up a quart jar. I'll be putting at least 3 tablespoons of the, heaping tablespoons of the arnica flowers and 3 heaping tablespoons of the comfrey. And probably about 3 of this as well. And then for the ground cloves, I'll do 2 or 3. I'm going to, depending on how it looks. And what I like to do typically is add the herbs in first, take a look at how much of the jar they're filling up. My goal usually anytime I'm doing any kind of infusion is to get the jar about half full of the herbs, because I want it to be as strongly infused as possible. So once I put in my 3, 3, 3, and my 2 or 3, I'm going to take a look at that and possibly add more depending on how full the jar is. One of the reasons I'm narrowing it down to these is because the comfrey and the arnica especially are really good at healing sprains, breaks, bruises, and the like. And any kind of hot pepper, anything that's very, very warm, help warm the area, which is going to help blood flow and healing. And that's why I also recommended maybe trying ginger if you wanted, because it does have warming properties to it too, as does rosemary, plus some other benefits. And the peppermint is really good too, because that gives it, with the peppermint and the hot pepper, it does give it more of that icy hot feel. But since I have the essential oils and the menthol crystals, which comes from peppermint, I decided I'll just wait and add those in like I normally do to make it stronger. Now I'm still going to be adding clove oil to the finished oil, eucalyptus oil, and then rosemary oil instead of using the rosemary herbs. So this is so I can make more space with my dried herbs so I could add more of the comfrey and the arnica. And then using something more potent in there like the menthol crystals or peppermint oil, and then the rosemary oil means I can save space with the dried herbs. But I will say, if all you have are the herbs and you don't want to invest in the essential oils, this does actually work pretty good without having to add the essential oils. So after I get my jar full, I then start pouring in the castor oil and the avocado oil, and then I'll stir that or shake it up a little bit, let that oil really settle down in there, let all the air bubbles escape, and then I'll keep topping it off, going back and forth between the castor and the avocado, so I'm getting roughly equal amounts. I prefer to do it that way, though you could pre-measure it. So you could start off by pre-mixing 1.5 cups of the castor oil and 1.5 cups of the avocado oil, or any other good oil that has a good shelf life, as I do really recommend that. I don't recommend extra virgin olive oil if you're going to let it infuse or heat it in any way for a long period of time, because extra virgin oils like that are more likely to go rancid. And because I do a room temperature infusion, I don't like to heat my oils at all because I don't want to damage the properties of these. So I do a long infusion of the herbs. So this is why I'll be starting another batch today. Even though I'm doing pretty good, I have been sharing some of this with family and friends as well. So I like to make sure I have more infusing once I strain out another batch, so that when I'm through with these, I've got another one ready to go, because I want it to infuse for a minimum of 6 months. And I typically do that in an area where it's not going to get direct sunlight, but stay at least at room temperature. After it's infused and you get a good color like this, your comfrey especially and the cloves, well, and the red pepper too, are going to be what really contributes to that dark color. And you might be able to see it better here in the finish where it's all strained out. It's got fingerprints on it because it does get used. So you can get an idea what the color is going to look like. Once I strain it out, which I'll go ahead and start doing this right now, then I'm going to add my essential oils. If that's what you're going to do, that's when I add them in. So typically I'll dump this whole jar in there as much as I can, and then let that strain. I'll dump the rest of that in there. I don't want to overflow it or have it bloop down into the jar like that, or into the measuring cup. And then I like to take a fork too and press that down. I should be able to dump the rest in here. Let's see if I can get the rest out, because you want to get as much of that good infused oil. That's a precious commodity right there. Then what I'll be doing is adding about a tablespoon of the menthol crystals. Now, you don't have to use menthol crystals. Again, you could use just the peppermint oil. And in that case, you're going to end up with approximately 3 cups of the oil, maybe more, depending on your exact ratios. So right now, this is about 2¼ cups. I'm going to say I might get at least 2½ cups, but at the most 3 cups. So I'm telling you that because when you go to add your oils, this is going to be all a matter of choice. A lot of people see what I add and say, wow, that's a lot. And yes, it is a lot, because I like it very, very strong. I want to feel it working as soon as I put it on my skin. And this is something we've been using for years, but what you choose to add is going to have to be up to you. And I always recommend starting small. So typically I start off with a capful in this amount, whatever I end up with, a capful of each of the clove, the eucalyptus, and if I'm using the peppermint oil instead of the crystals, then a capful of that. That is roughly about a teaspoon. And then I'll do the same with the rosemary. This will be a new oil I'll be adding as far as an essential oil, but I'll be using equal amounts. And then I will try it out and see what I think. And if I feel like it needs more, I may add another teaspoon of each of the essential oils. Again, I'm looking at getting it nice and strong. And same with the menthol crystals. And they, believe it or not, they will actually dissolve in the oil. Like I said, in this case, I'm putting a whole tablespoon. And if I feel like it needs more, I will add more in there and then mix it up really good. Now, somebody has asked me before, why not just add all the essential oils to the oil as you're infusing it? And I considered that, but here's the problem I have with that, because essential oils are not cheap. And when you go to strain that out, you're going to end up with a lot of that you're still not going to get out of your strained herbs. Unless, of course, you decide to use only powders like cayenne, ginger, etc., and not worry about straining it out. Even then, I don't know that I'd still do that, because the problem with the powders, this is the problem I had with the cayenne, is it would tend to settle to the bottom. Like when I added it to a bottle, like a little bottle, it had a mouth size similar to this, but it was a different type of bottle. That cayenne pepper ended up settling down to the bottom and making a mat that I never could quite completely get out. And you'd have to shake it all the time, constantly be shaking it to keep that from happening. There are a couple other options that you can add to this. And one I cannot mention on YouTube because it is a banned topic. It didn't used to be, but it still is to this day added to over-the-counter muscle rubs. And it's something that comes from the pine tree. Basically, the essential oil of pine that starts with a T. And then the other one that we can actually talk about would be DMSO. It also comes from pine. But the nice thing about both of those substances is they can also help the muscle rub go deeper into the muscle tissues and the joints so it can work better. So I typically add the one that starts with a T when I'm doing this, though I typically will just use this as an oil. I don't turn it into a salve. If you prefer to turn it into a salve, I did write down some basic ratios, which is the same that I use for my healing salve. And that would be for every 12 ounces of the oil, adding about 2 ounces of either shea butter or mango butter or something of that same consistency, and 2 ounces of beeswax, which would mean you would want to melt those first and then pour them into the oil and mix that really well and then let it set. And that should give you a pretty decent salve if you prefer to do that. Because I want this as strong as possible, I prefer to use it as an oil. I do realize for some people a salve might be easier because you don't risk spilling it everywhere, which yes, I have done with the oil. Grr. Now I want to come back to the castor oil. The reason I started doing this with castor oil is because castor oil alone is really good for joints and muscles just as a rub by itself. A lot of people get relief just using castor oil. But the reason I also then use a 50-50 blend with the avocado oil is because castor oil is very thick, and my personal opinion, this is my opinion, is that it will infuse better if it's not quite so viscous. So by mixing the two together, it decreases the viscosity of the oil so that I get a far better infusion in the end, but I'm still getting the benefits of the castor oil and also don't end up with that really greasy feeling of the castor oil. The two together just makes it just seems to make the perfect combination and the perfect weight. and it does absorb quite well. Now, just to clarify, you make this however you want. This is just what I use. If you don't have arnica and comfrey and you just want an immediate oil, doing the cayenne pepper or even mixing the cayenne pepper into the castor oil and not worrying about an actual long infusion can be a quick way to get that nice warming feel. And if you have essential oils, add those to the castor oil. That would be something you could use immediately instead of having to wait a long period of time. That's what I did when I first started making it. I just mixed the cayenne pepper essential oils into the whatever oil I was using at the time. It might have been olive oil at the time since I wasn't doing this long infusion, and just started using it and found it to be very, very, very helpful because I was always spraining something in dance and martial arts. And so, yeah. Anyway, I hope you found this video helpful, and any thoughts, ideas you'd like to share, please put those in comments down below. As always, whenever I create videos like this, the whole idea is just to give you a jumping off point, and then you create your own recipe based on what you can use, because maybe you're allergic to some of this stuff, and what's readily available to you. And with all that said, thanks for watching, take care, and God bless.